I want to talk this evening about a couple of different things. Go ahead. I want to talk a little bit about the toxicology of PCBs, what I call PCBs 101. One of my clients said, Peter, can you come up and give us a PCBs 101, explain to people why we're cleaning up a place that's got chemicals at such low concentrations? So that's what I'm going to do a bit of, and I will try my very best not to do the eye glazing lecture. And I took this right from them, including not only how does it affect people, next, but also how does it affect wildlife. Because in some cases we find that wildlife species are more sensitive than people to some chemicals, and PCBs are one of those. And then we're going to talk about the applications for that information to your cleanup, and give you some of the information about the cleanup that's going on now, and some of the information about the cleanup decisions that have been made. And very importantly, what is your role as you go forward? What are you doing here? If the decisions have already been made and they're cleaning it up, well, other than just getting information, is there something for you to do? And the answer is yes, there is. There always is on a cleanup site like this. You've heard a couple of things both in the presentation, in the video, which I compliment the producers of the video. It was very nicely done. I look forward to seeing it on the website, and I'm actually going to reference it on my website and tell other people to go look at it. Not only do PCBs cause cancer, they're associated with a couple of different types of cancer. They change hormone levels. As you heard about, they cause skin conditions. They cause liver abnormalities, changing and altering normal development of a variety of animals, including humans, especially neurological development. And they cause decreased birth weight. And any of you who pay attention to public health issues know that low birth weight is one of the more serious predictors of adverse health consequences for humans as those children grow up and go forward. On wildlife, we can document from wildlife studies and a little bit of experimental work on animals a large range of issues, including not only cancer in experimental animals, but reproductive and developmental impairments. And these were some of the things that were identified about as early as cancer in lab animals by researchers such as those at RTP. Developmental abnormalities, and I'm going to show you some of those here. Next. Experimentally, these are the primary issues, primary effects that we've seen in lab rats and mice and guinea pigs and so forth. And they cut across a wide range of animals, which means that they operate at a very fundamental, a very basic level. Interestingly enough, because there are so many PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, I'm going to show you a picture so that you can get an image about why there could be so many. There are 209 different ones. Not all of them are toxic. Some of them are toxic and they act in one way, others act in a different way. I'm going to give you just a little bit of that information. Next, please. And the reason why that they act in different ways is because of their shape. Because of literally their shape in space. Now these are PCBs, and as you can see, they also look like these chemicals and these chemicals. Well, you're going to see something else that they look like. You could put an estrogen molecule over those. It would cover them easily, suggesting maybe there are some of them that have estrogenic properties as well, and that's the case. But these are PCBs, and those other compounds are the dioxin-like compounds. This is dioxin. It shows you that around the corners of this molecule, you can stick everywhere where there's a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You can stick a chlorine, and you stick it on or you don't stick it on. You put on 1, you put on 2, you put on 3. So PCBs can have all of these, and you can put on 1 or 2 or 3 in different positions. So that's how you can have 209 different ones. PCBs, as you've already heard, are oily substances, and they are persistent even without those chlorines attached. But with chlorines attached, they're highly persistent, very persistent. And they may last not only for decades, but hundreds of years. And in fact, the environmental contaminants that you know about and that you've heard about, and some of you grew up, I can tell, like some of you have the same haircut that I do, and if I didn't, it would be the same color as others. With DDT chlordane, those are chlorinated organic compounds, and they persist in the environment today because that chlorine makes it stable, chemically stable, not otherwise stable. It also makes it active. So the chlorine imparts a couple of different very important properties. The fact that it's stuck to that Stargate-shaped molecule in the first place means that it's going to dissolve in oils and fats, not water. Well, maybe a small amount in water, maybe a very small amount. You have to have a lot of PCBs in order to get a measurable amount in water. And we do find places across the country where there are PCBs detected in water, which means that you've got an ongoing contribution of PCBs, or a lot of it, or some other problem. Because most of the time you'll find it attached to the sediment, which occurs in places like most of our rivers on the East Coast, because they're getting a fairly heavy sediment load washing out of the mountains, or, as shouldn't be the case, washing off of construction sites. After they're taken up by an animal, which is fairly easy because it's a lipid, it's a fat. Actually, animals out in the wide world go for fats. It's a high energy compound. Well, we're all on diets and trying not to take up fats because we don't need any more of that energy. But most animals in the world are absorbing them on purpose. And so they take it up and they accumulate it. And when the PCBs, parentheses, or any other environmental contaminant that comes along with it, maybe some of those DDTs are in there, a couple of those dioxins, maybe we've got some methylmercury in there. But any more of those compounds that also dissolve in fats will come in there. And because they go into fat, they get stored. And they get stored for a long period of time. And in fact, if you look at different animals around the world, you'd also expect, well, some animals are better at that than others, and some of them take up fat and then shed it when they migrate. Birds use fat when they migrate, right? That's how they make this long migration. And fish, any of you who fish know that fish don't feed very much when they're migrating. Certain species don't. A few do. And they burn off that fat. Well, you would expect to find these dramatic changes, and in fact you do. That's exactly what happens. So what we expect to happen, because these are fat-loving compounds, is exactly what we do see. However, we can find them in not only a little bit in water, but because they're oil-based, they're oily compounds, if you spread them out on the surface in a hot summer sun in a place like, a warm place like North Carolina, you are going to get a certain amount of it vaporizing. And EPA has actually measured that. They've gone to the trouble of figuring out how much, not only PCBs, but the dioxins and furans that I talked about, can you measure it coming off of the surface of soil, maybe getting carried away on a breeze, and then in the cool evening, settling back out. It's a condensation process. And in fact, not only does that happen locally, but it happens globally. So you get these compounds, not just PCBs, but others, that can be evaporated out of warm climates, the tropics, carried aloft, and carried to remote parts of the world, like the Arctic. Because that's the only process that explains how we have PCBs in animals that live in the Arctic. And it's true, we do. And as you've already said, as you've already been told, these compounds mostly come through food because they are fat-loving. And that's where they accumulate. Now, if you're in Anniston, Alabama, I'm sorry to say that you're going to get a fair amount over the years from breathing it and from picking it up in the soil, because they had a PCB manufacturing facility there. And it came out everywhere. But that's in Anniston, Alabama, where there's a high concentration coming out in all sorts of forms. For most of us, where we live, we do not have enough PCBs in the air that we're going to be breathing in enough to measure. Okay, next please.